Hey, welcome into the Irish NFL show presented by Cassidy Travel, Ireland's #1 travel agents. Check out CassidyTravel.ie and the email address in the bio below on YouTube or a podcast for some great offers, and also to contact Cassidy Travel if you're interested in going on a holiday. Some people are back from a holiday, some people aren't. Michael McQuaid, Brian O'Leary, Mark Cockerell. Let's just start off with this, lads. Honest to God, we're never getting sponsored by EasyJet, lads. I'm not having it. This is a joke. I'm still in London. This is an actual joke. And like the Vikings and the Saints are home, and I'm not. Brian, how's the form? You alright?
I'm good, Michael. Yeah, it was an enjoyable day yesterday. I feel
Aye.
quite tired, but thankfully I am home. I did joke with Colin in the airport last night when we saw the Vikings and the Saints players all packing their bags, and like last year when me and Mark saw the Dolphins players come through, they were all similar scenario, getting ready, quick, get on that plane as quickly as possible and get out of here. And I think I felt for you today when you told us the news that you're stuck in London, but sure you could be stuck in worse places than London.
I like Dublin 4, or Dublin 3. That was a joke. That was a joke.
Michael,
Hello, Mark.
Michael, I've got back from the US quicker than. Sorry, bit too loud. I got back quicker from the US than you've got back from London. That's a little bit disconcerting, to say the least.
Okay. Well, what Brian was talking about was we came into Stansted last night, and I had caught a few of the Saints players coming in. I'm sure you last seen them going to security as well. And then the Vikings came in about 35 minutes after. And at that point, I thought everything was sweet. Everything was rosy. Got to the end of the Packers Giants game, or not the Packers, Packers Patriots game, which I hope we're not talking about. There's no need to talk about that game. Zap. And thought everything's sweet. Woke up at 5 o'clock, and I'm still here. So hopefully I'll get home tomorrow morning. But an eventful day in London.
Don't worry about it, Michael. We won't talk about the Packers-Patriots game then. We'll spend extra time talking about the Broncos-Raiders game, just for you. Don't worry.
Whatever you want. Okay, so let's kick off. Obviously, London. We'll start off with that there. The Vikings just about get the win over the Saints in, frankly, what was an interesting finish to the game. I would put up the video that I have of the double doink at the end. I just tweeted it out there now if anybody wants to check it out. I didn't see the double doink. There was a big fat man in front of me, and I didn't see it. So all I seen was the reactions from the players, and obviously knew that the Vikings won. Sprinted down to the presser. Out comes Kirk Cousins, and I checked my phone, and there's been a double doink. Brian, let's be clear here. A really, really good day in London, but a very poor game through three quarters. Very, very poor. In my opinion, one of the worst games we've had in London for a long time, until the fourth quarter. And I can only imagine that we're going to have a classic this weekend, because the Giants haven't got a quarterback, the Packers can't score, so things can only get better. It's going to be good fun.
Our quarterback will be playing on Sunday, Michael. Don't worry about it. I do agree with you. I had a lot of people text me today saying, fantastic game, you must have really enjoyed it. But I was going to say, well, I'm not sure what game you were watching for large parts, because until 11 minutes 15 to go in the third quarter, we didn't really see any massive plays of note. And then Jefferson breaks free for 20. And we touched on it in the press conference. We asked the question of Kevin O'Connell that, did he change what in terms of the scheme? Did he change anything up to get Jefferson more involved in the game? Because, for 2.5 quarters, he was kept in check very well by the Saints defense. The Vikings have found a way to win, and Kirk Cousins has found a way to win. But I thought there was some dubious flags on the Saints defense, and overall I felt the Saints were the better team on the day. And I thought Dennis Allen coached a really strong team. And Jeff Duncan said yesterday that they would need a strong performance from the defense, and it looked like that was the way. And they found a way to get themselves in front late on with the touchdown from Taysom Hill, and then obviously the 2-point conversion to Landry. But it wasn't a big. It's a big win for the Vikings. I mean, despite what we may think of this Vikings team in terms of how erratic they can be, they are 3-1 with a game against the Bears this weekend, and they could go 4-1, and they'll be challenging the Packers for the division. So big win for them. The kicker obviously has been given the game ball, having missed an extra point to get the game winner. It's a big one for him to get that off his back as well.
Mark, hell of a game he missed. Andy Dalton going up against Kirk Cousins in the Efficiency Bowl. It was alright. It was great. It was great crack to be back in London again. Obviously, so much crack that I'm still here. That's the last time I'm going to joke about that. But The Vikings are in a good position now because the Packers, as far as I'm concerned, as it stands until I see them at the weekend, I'm not that fussed on their offense, and they've got a real opportunity now. They've beat the Packers in Minnesota week 1. If they can beat them in Lambeau and get through the season, they have a real chance of winning this division as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely. I mean, Aaron Rodgers himself has said that their offense is unsustainable. They can't keep winning games this way. They're putting too much pressure on their defense. So he'd admit as well for the Green Bay Packers that improvement is possible and desirable there. But yeah, I agree with you guys. There wasn't a great game by any stretch of the imagination. There was a horrible moment there. It looked like we might have more goals in the Manchester Derby than would have points in this particular game. But, you know, it was what it was. It was an efficient game, the 31st game ever to be played in London since the 2007 series started. And next week, Michael, the 32nd game, we finally welcome the 32nd team to the UK because the Green Bay Packers will finally make the trip. And the first ever game between two teams with winning records. So when you talk about the quality of the game, I mean, it's going to be up there because they're two teams that lead in their divisions at the moment. So that's going to be exciting to see.
That goes into my next point, lads, and I'll start with you, Brian. Like, the play on average in the league this year has been poor. That these two teams that are coming in the way that they've played in the first 3 weeks, have both got winning records. I mean, fair play to them, they have. But like, let's single out the Packers here. If the Packers were playing an efficient team last night with a quarterback and not somebody that had some sort of laser for a name, they would have won. They would have lost. Like, genuinely, I really feel like that. So I think for a neutral, it's enticing because, as Mark said, Packers coming in to London for the first time, all the hoopla around that there, but also they're under serious pressure now to get the offensive gauntlet down and somehow find a way to score 3 or 4 touchdowns against the Giants. And something that I would have said at the start of August, I don't think I would have said it. I'll say it now. I can't see it happening, which is nuts.
I don't know. Look, I don't want to get too much in the game. Something what I would say is right now the Giants' defense is, I put up there, they're probably one of the best defenses in the league, and that's quite surprising. Bearing in mind some of the talent in which they have the team, they're certainly playing above their level. Rick Martindale has done a fantastic job already. I mean, the first game they only gave up 20 points. Second game they gave up 16 points, 23 against the Cowboys, and again, okay, the Bears are a bit, let's be fair, but they still didn't give up a touchdown in the entirety of the game. Yes, they held them to 4 field goals. Defensively, they're playing very strong. But look, it's going to be, we can argue the toss around the Packers. The reality is Rodgers is still one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and he does have talent there. I know we're going to get into that game later on, but in fairness, what I would say is, and I hold my hands up because I felt the Packers would win this game comfortably. Bill Belichick, kudos to Bill Belichick because he can just game manage. He knows how to, no matter what the situation, no matter what the scenario, who they're playing, who's in the quarterback, he can manage a game. And that's what he did yesterday. He managed the game to an extent where, in overtime, with the ball at the 50-yard line, in the sense that they only need probably 15, 16 yards to be with an opportunity to kick a field goal. But I think they ran out of plays. Unfortunately, in terms of what they could scheme to get into that position. But I do feel the Packers are struggling offensively, and we haven't seen the best of them. And well, it'll be interesting to see the dynamic on Sunday about how explosive they can be against a defense that, for large parts of the season, has been very strong.
Mark, can I just jump on something here, and we'll maybe try and move on after this game, so get your point in as well if you want. Obviously, Vikings were great, very, very impressed with O'Connell and his presser yesterday. Also impressed with how much they gave access to the pressers. It was funny because I was talking to Will Gavin before the show, and he was in the changing rooms, and we got more access in the press conference than they all got. So the Vikings were very, very good in that sense. One thing that the Vikings done different to the Saints was they came in on Friday. The Saints came in on Monday, and every other team apart from the Broncos now in 3 weeks' time are coming in on the Friday. Broncos coming in the Tuesday. Do you think that's an issue for teams? Do you think the Friday factor is good for them, or do you think it doesn't matter in any way, shape, or form because it was a double doink which stopped overtime yesterday?
I don't know, to be absolutely honest with you. I mean, all the teams are doing their own sports science in relation to it, the impact on sleep, the impact on diet. That was one of the biggest pushes for the first number of years when people were coming over to London. I remember one year, I think the Jags brought over their own toilet roll as well as their own personal chefs. I mean, these guys analyze it to the nth degree. I just think it's going to be a little bit around personal preference and a little bit about what the teams want to set up. I know the Vikings gave personal day off during the week before they went and travel. So they kind of saw that, hey, give the guys a bit of space, give them time. And then we're just going to treat it like a long distance trip. We're going to go on the Friday, get their practice on Saturday, hit the game, and then almost get them back in on the early Monday morning before body clocks are gone all over the place. We sometimes talk about the West Coast traveling to East Coast and the difference that has for a 1 p.m. start. Like, bear in mind, these guys are basically kicking off at a 9:30 a.m. East Coast start. So, I'll leave that to their doctors and things to make the right decision. But you're right, Michael. I mean, there, but for the grace of God, like, this is a very fine line. I know we'll come back to the Packers later on. There's definitely other things we can say about them. Not all bad, Packers fans, not all bad. Actually, I'm going to give you a good comparison you'll like later on. But if the border bounced the other way, we'd be sitting here talking about how the Vikings 2-2, they're squandering another opportunity. They had a great opening day victory and now they're throwing it away. And equally, we'd be kind of lauding how the Saints are somehow still in the battle. Breath of a wind. Will Lutz kicks an amazing 60-yarder. Only a few moments ago, obviously, if the 61 had gone over, we'd have been saying, hey, that's the first time anyone's ever kicked 2 60-yard field goals in the same game. Unbelievable. At sea level, with no natural elements to help him, not a breath of wind. Instead, we found out that his range at sea level is about 60.9 yards, not quite 61. Small margins.
Absolutely. Let's talk about this Buffalo Bills Baltimore Ravens game. 23-20, the Bills get the win. John Harbaugh, gents, made 2 very interesting calls in the game, and I feel like he's not getting called out enough for it on national media today. I feel if it was a certain coach in different teams, that they'd be hounded. Granted, there's some things being said about him, but I feel when you've got Lamar there, things are a bit quieter than what they expect to be. Late in the third quarter, the Ravens had quite a good drive going. Jackson looked like he had got down, scrambled for a first down, was ruled to be short. Harbaugh challenged the play. They would go for it in 4th and down and getting it, but they wouldn't get any points. And the 4th and down Harbaugh situation is just likely all the time. With 4 minutes remaining, the Ravens... the whole 4th thing. You know what, Brian? I'll just get your thoughts on this. This was bananas. What the hell was going on? I genuinely feel like I'm getting annoyed even thinking about what John Harbaugh done yesterday. And I can understand why players were getting pissed off. And fair play to them for standing up to him, because it shows you how crazy it was at the end.
I think it's a frustration thing, because we've seen this quite a few times now with the Ravens, in terms of trying to be too clever and leaving points on the field in different games last season, even the season before that. And it's a bit unusual, because I can understand the narrative as to why he's gone for it on 4th down, because he's thinking in his own head, the worst case scenario is here, we're going to give the Bills the ball at the 2-yard line, because essentially he's probably thinking Lamar will realise, if I can't get a score, just get rid of the ball. Don't put it into it. And he chose it up to in the end zone when there's 2 defensive players there surrounding. I think it was Mark Andrews who was held for 15 yards yesterday. He put 2 receptions, so he didn't have a strong game. They probably felt, it's not the end of the world to allow them to start the 2-yard line. They're going to have to drive a long way to get a score. But the double whammy was the end of getting the ball to 20, which is a lot more approach. But bearing in mind, the Bills' second half was a lot more aggressive and better compared to what they were in the first half. I mean, it was 23 at one stage in the first half. But Harbaugh's comments after the game are a little bit strange, because essentially what he's saying is, I didn't trust my defense to not allow the Bills to go down and score a touchdown, which is why we had to go and get a touchdown of our own. So worst case scenario, the game goes to overtime. But if you look at the Bills on the 3 drives prior to that, touchdown, field goal and a punt. So they had held them on the previous drive. So why didn't he have the confidence again for his defense to hold them again? It was a wet weather. The weather was adverse. What's to say there wouldn't be a fumble, things wouldn't go right for the Bills. So I can understand it's a difficult game, and they've had a 17-point lead, which has been whittled away by the Bills. And look, the Bills are one of the best in the league, so they'll always come back. But they also had that scenario a couple of weeks ago where they allowed a big 28-point lead to be taken away by the Dolphins. Again, 2 home games. So I can understand why Ravens fans today are a bit disgusted. Like, take the points, live for another drive. Again, the psyche may change. Again, if it's 3 points, maybe the Bills won't be as aggressive on the drive. Maybe they'll be conservative. Maybe they'll be happy to take overtime. But it's one that's got away from them again.
Mark, Talking and we Brian mentioned there about the comebacks that the Ravens have allowed over the course of the season so far, 4 weeks in. For them, with that offense that they have, not to score any points in the second half is pretty unforgivable, isn't it? Like, of course, the defense can net points in, and when you go up against Josh Allen in that Buffalo offense, you'd be forgiven for letting in 30, never mind 23. So for Lamar Jackson to have the season he's had so far and then not score any points in the second half is a bit jarring or concerning. Also, Josh Allen has been 0-7 in his career when trailing by 17 or more points. He became the first quarterback to lead such a comeback since Fitzpatrick done it in 2011. Not bad.
No, not bad. Biggest obviously comeback, as you're calling out, of his young career so far. And maybe you'd say that's the one thing the Bills have been missing, or Josh Allen's been missing, is, the comeback in a game that wasn't expected. I know I only called it out the other week when they lost to the Dolphins. The Bills don't win those one-score games. They won their last 20 games by 10-plus points. They haven't won a game by less than 10 for over 2 seasons. So maybe this is a great sign for Bills fans that, do you know what? This team's got a bit of dog in them as well. They're going to eke out the close, tight games where you need that little bit of calmness, that serenity, even when the chips are down, that big comeback. And then when the plays really matter in the fourth quarter, making the right decisions, making the big play like the interception, not making the big mistake like the Ravens did. And you guys are rightly calling it out. This isn't once for the Ravens now. This is twice. They're the first team in NFL history to lose 2 games in the first 4 weeks of the season with a more than 17-point lead twice. That's not good. That's not a good reputation to be gaining in relation to it. Now, they've started so electric. You think, of course, they're going to win more than they're going to lose. That division they're in, the Steelers look putrid. The Browns don't look great, if we're being honest about it. And the Bengals maybe are getting back to themselves a little bit with a big win on Thursday night, but obviously didn't start the season so well. So you still reckon that this could be a big game come playoff time, that this could be a repeat later on when all the chips are in. But you'd have to hope and think that Harbaugh and Jackson's decision-making is going to improve because, like you say, Michael, very rightly, you want to get annoyed about something, Marcus Peters? Get annoyed about the fact that your defense didn't get the big turnover of Josh Allen in the second half when it really mattered. Get annoyed about the fact your offense didn't score a single point. It wasn't just those 2 fourth quarter drives. It was the entirety of the second half. They're the things to really get upset about. But look, in many respects, it was a game that probably wasn't what you saw in the Vikings and Saints. They are 2 really good teams, and a lot of the play was exceptional, whether exceptional offense or exceptional defense. These are 2 heavyweights going up and a lot of really well-coached fundamental football in not great conditions. So great game to see, might be important, obviously, come seeding time as well for the playoffs. And yeah, bring it on in January again. Love to see this one run back itself one more time.
Any other concerns, Brian, in regards to the Ravens and what Marcus said there? Bills are chipping away, and they just have to get the wins in the division that they're in at the minute. And obviously now it's coming out that Tua will not play next week for the Dolphins. Let's not have a discussion around that. Complete another show in Miami last week, especially on Thursday night. Hopefully he's okay. But there's an opportunity now for the Bills to try and win some games and get a lead in the East.
We've seen over the past couple of years when the Ravens go up against really good teams and really good coach teams in terms defensively, they find ways to slow Lamar Jackson down. Like, the Ravens had the ball for 38 minutes in this game. So they essentially controlled by and large the whole game. But yeah, they couldn't score in the second half. And okay, there's a different dynamic in Miami, but they kept under the same defensive staff. They found ways to slow him down as well. Like, he's a great player, don't get me wrong. Most fans in the league would love to have him as their quarterback, but teams do find ways to slow him down, and everybody has the same footprint. They all look at the same defensive schemes and what teams are doing to find ways to get their way of doing it when it comes to playing.
Yeah, injury impacted Bills defense again. I know we talked about that with the Miami game before, but injury impacted is worth noting as well. They found the way, as you say.
Okay, no worries. Let's move on to the Eagles, who played the Jaguars. Jaguars went in. Jaguars roared into a 14-0 lead at one point at the start of this game. Eagles go 4-0, 29-21 victory Still undefeated. More of a quiet day, Brian, for Jalen Hurts, but it was a Miles Sanders bowl. Really, really good performance from him. But for Trevor Lawrence, a few mistakes, and maybe if those mistakes were rectified, if it was a different day, the game could have been a lot closer. The one takeaway that I got from this game of 40 this morning is both teams are really good. I'm excited to see both teams later in the stretch in the season.
Yeah, like the Jags, they've lost a difficult one here, and like I picked them. I felt they would win when I saw 14-0 when we walked out of our press conference yesterday. We saw 14-0. I was thinking, here we go. This is what I expected: a strong defense to hold Hurts in check. And the Jags were driving a 14-0 up. They were in the Eagles' half of the field, and then he has a fumble in which no one touched him. He's running with the ball, and he lets it slip. He had 4 fumbles yesterday and an interception. The weather was bad, so okay, we'll give him a benefit of the doubt. But when you have those many turnovers, you're not going to win a game in the NFL. You need to protect the ball. And they had 7 drives where they didn't complete 1 first down. Essentially, they had 7 3-and-outs, which you're never going to win games. And you're right, Hurts didn't have the best of games yesterday, but this is the reality of the Eagles' offense. They can lean on the run. They had 50 rushing plays yesterday, and they had 134 yards off Sanders. So when you've got that in your back pocket, you don't need Hurts to be getting outside the pocket and running all day long. And he doesn't necessarily have to be throwing deep balls down the field. They can rely on the run game, and that's essentially what happened yesterday. They got him over the line, and they were outscored in the second quarter, 3 touchdowns by the Eagles, and they put the game away in the end. Like with extra field goals, there was a late touchdown, but once the second half came in, I didn't feel there was any other result than an Eagles victory.
Mark, in terms of the Eagles, have you looked at their schedule? Are they going to lose a game before this? Is it the Packers they're playing in November? Genuinely, I just can't see what they're going to lose.
Yeah, I know, but look, any given Sunday as well, and all that. I think it is fascinating that from 7 teams in October 2020 being undefeated, 5 in 21, we now only have 1 in October 2022. If, the league wants parity, by God, has he got it? The Eagles, the only undefeated team, and the Texans, the only team without a victory. But this game, to me, showed why the Eagles are the last undefeated team and why Philadelphia is getting more excited about them. Sirianni's putting his trust in Jalen Hurts. I mean, he didn't have a huge day in terms of numbers per se, but they were in a very difficult 3rd and long situation right by the goal line, going backwards, messing up a drive a bit. And Hurts came out not only with a great 13-yard run, but then a huge run, if you can have a huge run, for 3 yards for a touchdown, where he took a massive lick on the goal line. It was a real, I'm going to get it. This is me. This is kind of all my frustration about trying to, tailored as a tailback or a running back, about losing my gig to Tua back in Alabama, about no one believing in me and all these people giving out about me. It was a degree of leadership. And Sirianni said afterwards, that's why I trust you. I put my trust in you. And you can kind of draw parallels, if you're an Eagles fans, to Doug Peterson putting his trust in Nick Foles when it really mattered. That's what you need. He believes he's his guy. He's backing him to the hill. And I think Hurts is responding to that. Of course, it helps when you've got AJ Brown. You've got 2 amazing deep threats. Let's be honest about this, to take the top off any defense. That helps with Smith and Brown. So that's nice. But they've got a great rushing attack. They've got a really good defense. And for the Jags, was this a little bit of a wake-up call? Because at the end of the first quarter, it was like, oh my God, these Jags are for real. Trevor Lawrence is really for real. What a difference just a half-decent coach makes. And Doug Peterson is loving his return to Philadelphia. But when you have 5 turnovers, that Brian alluded to, there is a little bit of waking up. But to push the Eagles like they did, push them on offense, push them on defense, let's reset a little bit there. Those Jags, they're going to be in it to win it, but the Eagles are in a different class.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, they're probably the standout in the NFC. I'm excited to see how the Jags can do. I feel that they could go on a run, looking at their schedule over the next few weeks. So let's see what happens there. They could be where we all thought Miami could be in the wild card if Tua goes out for a few more weeks. Hopefully he's okay. Chargers, Texans. Chargers benefiting on the Raiders getting the first win, Broncos losing. Going 2-2 on the season, 34-24 victory. A couple of elements here. Brian Davis Mills, obviously, a couple of interceptions, but this Texans team to put up 24 against the Chargers in the situation that they've been in recent years, and the situation in which the Chargers are in, is not too bad. Herbert gets the job done, over 330 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, and multiple scorers in terms of Austin Eckler gets twice, only 60 yards in a day, but scores 2 touchdowns. They got the job done.
Yeah, Eckler was better yesterday, and Herbert was better yesterday. He looked more comfortable this week compared to what we saw last week. But you're right, Davis Mills put a performance on this Chargers defense in the second half. Chargers defense that has 30th in points allowed and 20 yards allowed. Brandon Staley was the answer. He was brought in to correct this defense. You know, he was great defense coordinator in the Rams, and the owners bought into this. If we can only fix this defense with Justin Herbert here, we have a chance to go and make a big push at the Super Bowl. I'd argue if there was any decent head coach in there coaching this team really would be a Super Bowl contender. But whilst he's there, I don't believe in him. Yeah, it's a good win. They allowed him to come back. Davis Mills, who for me is an average quarterback, put up a lot of yards on them. Maybe people will challenge me and say it was garbage time stuff, but they came back, rallied, got some nice points on the board. I'm still not convinced by the Chargers. I don't think I ever will, to be honest. Not this season, anyway.
Brian's really putting himself into a corner here with Staley because they could turn it on in November and December, like a lot of teams have previously. Look, they're in a tough division, but at the same time, Mark, 27 for 39. Herbert is getting the job done, but we do need to see some sort of not improvement, but we need to see the game evolve for this team over the next few weeks to see if we can say to them, well, can this team take on in the West? Can they beat the Chiefs whenever they play them in LA at some point this season? And that's the big question.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, they've got to get people healthy first still. I mean, they're dealing with a revamped O-line. They're still dealing with injuries at the wide receiver position. So they don't have everything. Herbert himself is still injured. I mean, when they had to kind of account for Slater's absence and kind of plug and play a left guard this week, you do worry about him aggravating injuries further. So this was always, to be honest, a game to get through. Of course, they should beat the Texans, especially they should beat the Texans with Davis Mills at quarterback, because he's not been performing well this season at all. And it does feel a little bit like Cinderella in terms of he had a couple of impressive performances towards the end of last season, but it just turned midnight. Everything's turned to pumpkin and mice again, and he's been found wanting, left on the side of the road in rags. The reality is he's probably going to be a starting quarterback for the Texans for the rest of the season because it's not like they invested in the backup position behind him. So again, another head coach, in this instance, Lovie Smith at the Texans, is being left out to dry by his GM, by his ownership yet again, and the rebuilding continues. If I'm a Chargers fan or if I'm looking at the Chargers' weakness, again, it looks like run defense. You knew what the Texans were going to do. Damian Pierce had a kind of a career day. He had one big run for 75 yards. He put about 130 on the ground. If you're letting a player of that caliber gash you, what's it going to be like? I mean, Melvin Gordon for the Broncos, for example, Michael. What about Clyde Edwards-Helaire from the Chiefs in relation to it? Josh Jacobs had a great day rushing the football yesterday. What about him for the Raiders? They must be licking their lips if that Chargers run D is not going to perform again. Been their Achilles heel many's a year, especially last year, and actually the year before that. I think they were 31st in the league. So you're right. If Staley isn't fixing that, then, Christ, guys, that's what you're supposed to be doing. But it is week 4. Get the win, move on, try and improve next week.
Talking about improving, the team that's improved this season so far at least, Detroit Lions put up 45 points against the Seattle Seahawks, and by God, they still lost the game 48-45. Everyone's talking about Geno Smith, who is cooking or playing well. Jared Goff at 378 passing yards yesterday for 4 touchdowns, albeit 1 interception. He's proven people wrong, Brian. I mean, people were writing him off at the start of the season, and he's become efficient in this Lions team that has taken a step forward. But you have to argue, to let 14 or 48 points in any game is unacceptable defensively. Same going for Seattle, who let 45 in. I don't want to say 2 bad teams because I do rate the Lions more personally than the Seahawks, but it didn't show yesterday.
The Lions are... See, we said when we previewed the opening weekend of the season, we talked about the Lions' defense being erratic, struggling. Their secondary is weak. Philly exploited it. Washington exploited it for large parts of week 2, and then inevitably in the end last week, Minnesota found ways to exploit it. They're struggling defense. Yeah, they're very good on offense and they put up some great numbers, but that's the reality situation they're in. They're going to have to battle these high-scoring games and find a way to come out the right end. You're talking about Geno Smith cooking. He's balling because he was 23 of 30 322 touchdowns, only 7 incomplete passes. And to sum up the Lions' defense, Seattle didn't punt once in the entirety of the whole game. Once they turned the ball over and they went for 4th downs, they never punted once in the whole game. And the Lions scored 4 touchdowns from the 7-minute marker in the third quarter. So whilst the game looks tight, it really wasn't. Like, Seattle were quite comfortable. It actually reminded me in a way of the game in which the Lions played in week 1, where the Eagles were so far ahead and the Lions came rallying back and they fell short, but they didn't really fall short. It was a lot of late scores, and it was a similar scenario yesterday. Seattle, I was a bit annoyed with myself because I've been high on Seattle and I picked them a couple of times and they haven't delivered, and I felt yesterday was a game for them, but I went with the Lions. But when I saw the injuries, we discussed it yesterday morning before we did the show in London, the fact that Brown was out, Swift was out, DJ Chalk was out, I think if we had known that situation when we were making our selections earlier in the week, we may have changed our pick towards Seattle. But Pete Carroll, he just finds ways to get wins out of teams that when he doesn't have a good roster.
Mark, as Brian said there, obviously multiple players out. St. Brown, Amon out again, DJ Shark, Swift. They still racked up 520 yards on the offense. Does that speak volumes as in how poor the defense is for Seattle, or what takeaway do you have from that? And it's interesting. Obviously, Rashad Penny had a great game as well for Seattle, so there was many different ways to take from each team there. But for me, I just can't see either team being down the stretch at the end of the year. Personally, I just don't feel it.
Well, no, I mean the Seahawks at least are on their way to the 11 wins that Brian predicted at the start of the season. He only predicted 9. I know, that's why I'm doing it. He only predicted 9, but we'll keep adding to it. But of course, it is all about the Lions, really. I mean, they're first in points scored, but last in terms of points conceded. A 1-3, but I think it's 35.25 points per game they're conceding, and they're scoring 35 points per game. I mean, it's razor thin, but they're 1-3 on foot of that. I mean, they just go to cement their legacy as the red zone team of the century, as far as I'm concerned, because you can never not watch them in that 6 p.m. window, because they're either putridly behind or putridly ahead, and then there's always drama in the fourth quarter whenever they're playing. And look, they're entertaining to watch at the moment. There's been plenty of Lions teams outside of the Barry Sanders years and the Calvin Johnson years, but they've been dreadful to watch. So at least you've got that, Lions fans. But what are they going to do about that defense? Dan Campbell came out and said, we're going to review the entirety of this defense from coaching down over the next week. Well, what the hell were you doing during the whole offseason? What the hell were you doing during the first 3 weeks when you've been terrible? Why are you suddenly turning around to that with a quarter of the season gone? Look, I'm sad for it. They seem like a good news story. They're obviously Hard Knocks. They're very entertaining. The dude cares, and he actually seems to be a pretty decent coach, especially if he's reviving the career of Jared Goff. But they can't keep playing games like that. As a neutral, fantastic to watch. Bet the over every time. But, that's completely and utterly unsustainable. And who knows? Maybe Brian is right about Seattle. Maybe they're going to sneak in some sloppy wins here and there, but are we convinced by Geno Smith? No. Are we convinced that they have the pathway to the future necessarily there? No, not at all.
I'm really intrigued to see how they get on this weekend, because they're playing at home to the Patriots, and I touched on the fact that Belichick, despite his roster, finds a way to put a proper game plan around. So I'd be interested to see how he game plans around an explosive offense.
Yeah, I should have remembered that before I made that comment now for Seahawks fans to rub in my face again, Brian. Thanks.
And I have not picked the Patriots so far this season, which is to my detriment. And I know people probably hate me for it. So I think we're on Wednesday this week. Potentially we'll talk about this off air after. So stick around for picks this week. One team that I did pick this week, and if you watch it back, I was confident enough. I don't rate the Steelers team at all. I still don't, even with Kenny Pickett coming in. I think Mitchell Trubisky, for however long the game was at least, had 7 for 13. Kenny Pickett, 10 for 13 completions. 3 interceptions in the game, albeit some of them, in my opinion, were out of his control. At least one of them was. But I think it's worrying times for Pittsburgh. I was watching a show this morning, I'll not say who it was, but they were saying, it was like one of the main shows in the States, and they were saying, people are delighted because the new era of Steelers football has started, and they're calling Kenny Pickett a generational talent. I mean, I'll take what they're smoking. please, because it's been a long day. And I mean, like, who knows what can happen, lads? I mean, it could take him a couple of years. Like, I just don't get the whole hype around it. But look, the Jets pull it off. Jets look, in my opinion, one of the most improved teams in the league. And Robert Saleh is the epitome of give a team time, give a manager or a head coach time, and they get the job done. Really, really impressed with the Jets. Fair play to them. Not a great game though, Brandon.
No, it wasn't the best again for 3 quarters. Not a lot happened. I said Kenny Pickett by week 6 in our season preview, or divisional preview. I also said Mike Tomlin would have a losing record this year because of Kenny Pickett being playing by week 6, and I stand by that. The only thing that was exciting about the game was the fact that Pickett came in, and they did have an opportunity to try and kill off the game, but the Jets didn't do a lot for 3 quarters, and yet Zach Wilson, 4 quarter, 21 plays, 9 first downs, held on to the ball for 9 minutes and 23 of the 4 quarter and scored 2 touchdowns. So, yeah, Jets fans, like, I picked them last week against the Bengals because I can see they're starting to evolve as a team under Salah, and they have got great players there. And you would argue this Jets offense, if they do get production out of Wilson, have got all the players there. I mean, Garrett Wilson looks like a great player they picked up in the draft. They brought in tight end for the Bengals. They've increased players on the defense, in terms of what they did in the draft. So they've got all the right attributes to have a good season. It's a big win, but not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but this is a big weekend for the Jets because the following week they go to Green Bay, and they're at home this weekend to Miami. And we've seen the Jets stop-start over the course of 4 or 5 years where they'd have a really good win, and they think they're going to follow up. Like, I got caught up with the whole win in week 2, and I felt they'd beat the Bengals. It didn't materialise. They were very flat. Will they be flat this weekend against Miami, who will be led by Teddy Bridgewater? So it's a big game for the Jets maybe to turn their fortunes around this weekend.
Yeah, looking forward to that game at the weekend, and looking forward to seeing how Teddy Bridgewater gets on in Miami. Wish him all the very best over the next few weeks for 25 million reasons. Mark, Zach Wilson, this offense looks more fluid. Like, it's not pretty to watch at the minute, but everything takes time. The Jets are going in the right direction. They're 2-2 to start the season off. What are your expectations for them in the AFC East? Can they finish third?
Oh, they can definitely finish third. I mean, they're ahead of the Patriots at the moment, so they're on a run there. I mean, obviously, if Miami has Tua out for any prolonged period of time as well, does that, team splutter? I think they've got to feel very hopeful. We touched on it last week. This Jets offense has been performing well with Joe Flacco behind the controls and revitalizing his career. Is it maybe that they've just got the right parts around that offense for the first time ever? Good coaching, good line, some threats down the field. And Wilson took his time to get going, but when you score 2 fourth-quarter touchdowns against the Pittsburgh Steelers and a Mike Tomlin coached defense in any occasion, that's worthy to note, especially someone who's been criticized for his lack of poise and lack of performance on so many occasions. So that, if anything, is the most positive sign for the Jets. Of course, the story about this is Pickett coming in. The one criticism I would say in this regard is directed at Mike Tomlin is, like, if you were going to do this, why now? Because now you've messed everyone up. Because if you were going to do this 10 days ago when you had your mini bye effectively and give him 10 days of practicing with the first teamers, doing it at half time and benching Trubisky like that. He can't go back now. If he goes back to Trubisky now, where's Trubisky's confidence at? And they're about to face an absolute murderer's row of a schedule. I think someone phoned in or asked us the question, not phoned in, but messaged us last week, are Pittsburgh going to make a quarterback change? I want to ask that person for the lotto numbers, but we all discussed it and we're all kind of like, no, it doesn't make sense now because they haven't been giving them the reps. Why would they make it now? They've got this big schedule of games coming up. Mike Tomlin seems to think better, but look what he did. 10, as you said, 10 for 13, but 3 interceptions. Like, great news, Pittsburgh. Your new quarterback doesn't let the ball hit the ground and he completes all the time. The only problem is if 3 of them are going to the opposition, that's not very helpful. Yes, I think one of them in particular was a long shot, but I just feel like they haven't set anyone up to succeed in that particular scenario. And now what they do for the rest of the season, they've got to hand the reins over to him. There's going to face a lot of tough defenses the next few weeks. And that may not be conducive to his development, a la Zach Wilson a couple of years ago, a la so many other young quarterbacks who may be thrown into the fray a little bit too early. If you think I'm being too harsh, though, Steelers fans, here's a little bit of a stat to help you feel better at night. Go back, 2004, I want to say. And a young Ben Roethlisberger comes in relief for Tommy Maddox. He promptly throws 2 interceptions in that game. What happens after that? He goes on to win his next 15 regular season games in a row as a rookie, and then going into the next season. So maybe.
And we can't compare it. We cannot compare him to him. And come on.
I'm trying to give Steelers fans some hope, Michael.
And
we don't want to dash fans hope. Belief.
All this lottery number talk, all the experts in the Bay Area and way further in the Bay Area said that Jimmy Garoppolo wasn't getting reps with the first teamers and he wasn't expected to play and he was expected to get traded, and then he signed a contract and now he's playing, albeit Trey Lance was injured. I still think, lads, if Trey Lance didn't go down and he was struggling in week 4 or week 5, Garoppolo would be in. I just think some of the talk from teams is ridiculous, and I just feel like it's honestly, it's borderline a joke the way Tomlin has managed that situation. But he's got, and to be fair to Tomlin, he's got all the years behind him that he can have a couple of years like this. He's a legendary coach in this league, so he's grand. However, he doesn't have the answer quarterback. Short term or long term questions will be asked, because could you see Kenny Pickett having a Mac Jones type season year 1? No, won't happen.
He should have done a Mac Jones on it. He should have put him in from day 1. He would be better now in week 5. He would have had the bumps and the bruises, the ups and the downs very early on, but I guarantee the Steelers would have been in a better position now than him going in to Buffalo this weekend. And Mark's right, they're going to have to play him. He can't go back on it now. He'll look an idiot if he goes back on it now. Should have played him from week 1. Should have done what the Patriots did last year and other teams throughout the course and just said, it wasn't like he had someone there who was really, it's not like, oh, he's been really good in his career. It's Mitch Trubisky. He was a backup last year in Buffalo. He didn't play. They went and picked up a backup. He's a backup for a reason. The Bears, who are the Bears right now, let him go because he wasn't good enough. Ryan Pace is, they should have looked at Ryan Pace's CV, the GM of the Bears, because he picked Mitch Trubisky and then he followed up by picking Justin Fields. And right now, Justin Fields doesn't look like he's going to be the answer in the long term. Maybe they should have looked at his selections and said, hold fire here.
Justin Fields hasn't been given any protection. I mean, that's the whole they have not built a team around him at all. At least Pittsburgh have got a solid defense. They can improve the line a bit, but Fields is a whole different bananas.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Michael. I'll make one more point. They lost the GM in this offseason. That has massive change for a GM that was there so long. You're transitioning to a new GM. He has a different strategy. Tomlin's used to certain decisions being made with his previous GM for so long. So there's an amalgamation of a number of reasons. But for me, they should have just went from day 1. Mark's right. They've got the next 4 or 5 games are excruciating. And I feel for the kid because he's going to have a very difficult time in the next few weeks.
Talking about excruciating, let's talk about the Colts. Colts losing to the Titans 24-17. A bit like whenever every team in the league plays Man United. They're up for the game because it's Man United. For example, West Ham or Arsenal or Newcastle. They're all if they host United, doesn't matter how bad United are, they're up for it. The crowd's up for it. Last week they were up for it against the Chiefs and they won the game because of their defense. And by Jesus, they're poor. There is no other way of putting it out there. They're in trouble. As far as I'm concerned, the head coach and the GM are on the deck and they now have to go to Denver. If they can't beat the Broncos, who have not got a run game and an inefficient offense at the minute, on Thursday Night Football, Brian, they've got serious issues. Michael Pittman on Sunday had, if my computer will bloody load, 31 yards, an average of 10.3 yards each. Come on here. So, why did he not build that offensive line around this team? We'd be talking about a whole different situation here. But for the Titans to go in, fair play to them.
Michael, this offensive line has been one of the best in the league for 4 or 5 years. So they probably felt they had enough there. They lost a couple of players in free agency last March, April. But by and large, they felt there was a good offensive line there. Not to get too far ahead, you're talking about Thursday's game. That offensive line is going to, now, in fairness, the Raiders' offensive line played reasonably well last night. But Randy Gregory started off well. Chubb, they're going to struggle against those guys in Mile High and Thursday. And Jonathan Taylor, in all likelihood, is out for the season. Looks like he is not out for the season. Sorry, he's out of this game. The offensive line couldn't do anything. He actually threw for 359 yards yesterday. But the problem was the damage was done. They allowed 24 unanswered points. Derrick Henry was running for an average of 6 yards per gain. And when Derrick Henry gets going, the Titans are a different team offensively because they can rely on their own game. It allows Tannehill time to make the passes. I wouldn't be blown away with the Titans yesterday. I still think they're going to struggle, but we all did pick the Colts. We felt the Colts would. Maybe we overreacted to their win last week because we did discuss the fact that the Chiefs kind of threw that one away last week. So, but I don't rate the Colts this Thursday anyway. Certainly.
I have to give it the Hoagie Bear picking the Titans. I nearly picked the Titans, but I didn't, so I can't sit here and say it. What Brian said about the defense, how can the defense turn up one Sunday against Mahomes and not turn up against the Titans?
Well, they did. I mean, they turned up in the second half. They didn't concede a single point in the second half. But the problem was they allowed the Titans to get their momentum. They allowed Derrick Henry to rush all over them at the start of the game, and they conceded points to beat the band. I mean, look, the Titans have been immaculate almost against the AFC South for the last while. I think they're like 11-1 or 11-2 in the last couple of seasons. So they win their divisional games. The reality is, I thought, like many people, was like the Titans are, far from where they were last year, and maybe the Colts are starting to figure out their problems. They're not protecting Ryan. The defense did concede too much, obviously, in the first half to give them something to come back from. But look at the security issues. Like at the end of the game, in the last 15, 16 minutes, they had 3 turnovers. They missed field goals. They missed opportunities. They still could have won this game, but they're just not executing when it matters. Jonathan Taylor, Brian said obviously my best next game, but it just was non-factor in this game. They're not giving him space or opportunities. Pittman, as you alluded to, isn't getting yards, isn't getting catches, and part of that is because Ryan isn't also getting time in the pocket. And maybe, whereas I thought he was a big solution, a big upgrade on Carson Wentz for the Colts, maybe he isn't. Maybe he's shot. Maybe the Falcons had it right and just shipping him out the door and moving on to the future. But so far, so bad for the Colts. Look, we touched on it. They start seasons terribly. I mean, the other year they're 1-6, and they came back and made the playoffs. This is a common practice, but they're giving themselves a big hole. And you just have to look at the sidelines and the shots in the owner's box. Jim Irsay, who is not regarded as the most patient of men of all time, is absolutely fuming. And you're saying, could they be on the hot seat? Jeez, I mean,
are they out? Is Frank Reich out if they lose on Thursday?
Well, I wouldn't personally. I think he's got enough credit in the bank for me, but whether he's got enough credit in the bank for Jim Irsay is another matter altogether. All the noise out of Indy is he's absolutely steaming. He wants to make a statement. He wants to change the direction. The only thing he can do is fire people.
He's out
worked for the Raiders last year in different circumstances, obviously, but sometimes immediate change can change the mood in a team.
It's difficult to fire a coach during the season because where does he go to get a coach now? It'll end up being a situation like the Raiders where someone will step in for the remainder of the season. They'll have an upward turn in results, and then he's left in a quandary. Does he keep that guy as the head coach, or does he go somewhere else? I think inevitably what will happen is he'll be fired at the end of the season. And whether the Colts make the playoffs or not, there's a lot of coaches in the league, I would imagine, that would see the Colts, whether it's Matt Ryan or the next quarterback, as an attractive proposition to go and coach because they are a well-run team. And maybe Ballard will be given the benefit of the doubt there, but I don't see him being fired during the season, even if they do lose this weekend.
Yeah, they're playing the Broncos Thursday night. Broncos losing to the Raiders on Sunday night. Raiders win their first game of the season, go 1-3. Raiders had a decent performance, and Josh Jacobs had a really, really good day. Broncos offense looking pretty poor. I would go as far as saying, and I'll ask this in a second. Obviously, Albert Okwuegbunam, the tight end, 1 target the whole game. Javonte Williams is the major factor tonight. That's probably the biggest injury news of today. He's out for the season. Yep. So big news. Brian, are the Denver Broncos the worst coach team in the NFL?
Yeah, Michael. I'm sorry they are. I like Hackett at the end.
Yeah, they are.
With this nonsense of calling timeouts like a pestilent, he's like a child when he's not getting his own way. The game's gone. He was calling timeouts. He did it in the first game in Seattle, just let the game go. But there was an improvement in the offense. I mean, there was more vertical passes down the field that were picked up by Judy and Sutton, and they got, they did get players open. It was a little bit more expansive. But the struggles that we saw the first few weeks were still there. They were 3 of 11 on third down. And that's not good enough. And Gareth Bowles, the offensive line, on the offensive line in particular, struggled all day. I mean, he was bear hugging players, never mind holding players.
You see his wee jump at the end.
Look, I didn't even want to. Like I said to you today, that's like me. It was like me in the Algarve jumping into the swimming pool. I felt when I looked at that last night. But and Melvin Gordon, I mean, he's had 4 fumbles in 4 games. When is that going to stop? I mean, and
he's now the lead back in Denver.
Yeah,
he's the lead.
Yeah, Bill Parcells used to say, great comment. What you see on the screen is most of the time is reality. Reality is he can't hold on to the ball and take it down. Now they're going to have to lean on him to be the first running back. They couldn't defensively. I felt they'd win the game because I felt the offense has been playing great defensively. They've been quite good this year, and I thought they would hold Carr and the offense, which has struggled as well for large parts of the season so far. But Josh Jacobs, they come in, they're tackling as well defensively yesterday. I mean, Carr got out of the pocket a couple of times and ran. They weren't picking him up, and then Josh Jacobs seemed to run through him at times, and they got the momentum. They got back in the game. The Broncos were 2 points behind. They had him on a 2nd and 14, and they allowed a 17-yard slant to Devontae Adams, which essentially for me put the game away. And they then couldn't hold up Jacobs. He was going through them. I felt the offensive line yesterday for the Raiders, for all the criticism it's got, going up against quite a good front seven, they did a good enough job to allow Carr plenty of time in the pocket.
Mark, as mentioned there, Ingram, actually, who is now the lead back, walked off crying yesterday in his press conference. 2 fumbles. Very difficult for a team to bring a running back in, even as a RB2, RB3. I know Mike Boone's there, but when it was such a short week, and there's really nobody of any note available, maybe bar Philip Lindsay, and I don't think the team would be relying on something like that now. They're in trouble, basically.
Yeah, they've got a big part of their offense to fill in. I mean, you never like to see that happen to a young player in his second year. He's obviously had a great first season, but he run for over 1,200 yards and looked like he was going to be a big part of this offense this year continued. So, best wishes to him for a swift and safe recovery from the injury. But yeah, I mean, that was the one part of the Denver offense that seemed to be clicking at all, is that they were still rushing the ball pretty well. Look, the game yesterday, I had picked the Raiders. I just felt they were absolutely in desperation mode. Like, if they've gone 0-4, like, the season's gone. McDaniels might be one and done as a coach. I mean, it's really in desperate times. The irony, of course, that he gets his first win in 11 years against the team that he left as a head coach, or was fired from, is somewhat relevant. But it's like, they remembered Devontae Adams. Do you know what? Throw him the ball and he'll get you over 100 yards. That might be an idea. And Josh Jacobs, as we've already alluded to, did run it really well. But to come back to Denver, look, Michael, I think you say about the coaching, they're the most penalized team in the NFL. Penalties every day of the week are the biggest sign of coaching for me, because it's about consistency, it's about stability, it's about doing the right thing the right day. Of course, if someone beats you off the mark, you want to bear hug them to the ground once, that's fine. But if you're doing it nearly every second play, that's a sign that you haven't been coached your technique well and you're just outmatched at the NFL level. I'm fortunate of talking with Maurice Jones-Drew earlier in the week, and he kind of commented, obviously, he was talking about the Vikings-Saints game, but he was getting excited for the Jags-Broncos game coming up, and he's quite scathing about Russell Wilson as well. He's like, that guy got, he had every excuse in Seattle. Now he's gone to Denver. He can't have any more excuses. He's got the defense. He's got the offensive talent around him. And he was seriously questioning, it's like, is Russell Wilson as good as we always make him out to be? And yesterday, in a game where you've lost your first running back, you've still got opportunities in the game. Yes, of course, Gordon's fumble doesn't help him. You really wanted to see him step it up somehow, make some magic happen. Yes, he's got Cortland Sutton. He's got Jerry Jeudy. He's got talented wide receivers in the team. And I think that's the disappointing thing for neutrals, as well as for Broncos fans in relation to it. So, look, they're at 2-2. It's not like the end of the season's over. There's still plenty of opportunity, but they've got to fix it. They got to fix it fast. And for the Raiders, yeah, maybe there's some hope of sneaking in the back door, but they've still got a lot of work to do as well. One swallow does not make a summer.
One big element from yesterday, Patrick Surtain. Very impressive so far this season. Mark mentioned consistency. Let's talk about consistency. Let's talk about this Green Bay New England Patriots game. I was going to get that Zap Simpsons moment up in the video, but I couldn't find a full screen video. Please God, just let this lad play for the Patriots forever, so I can say this every week. Somebody just asked me if I'm still in London. Yes, I am. Thank you for that. Brian, where do we start here, mate? How did this game go to overtime? Like, what? Where do we go from here? The Patriots were impressive. Impressive. I thought they were going to win the game at least twice. So, fair play to them. Going into Lambeau and playing like that.
Well, there's a couple of reasons. We've kind of touched on this early on in the show. The Packers' offense is not what we're used to seeing. They haven't got the groove going. I thought Belichick, whilst he lost the game, managed a very good game. He relied on the run, even no matter who was the quarterback will hire. I mean, Stevenson and Harris were doing very well, which allowed them to obviously have long, continuous drives. It was what worried me very early was how Hoyer was getting hit from the opening drive nearly. Like 2 or 3 times he was hit before he eventually, got the concussion. And Zippy, whatever we call him, I was thinking last night, Zippy. Yeah, if they had won, I was coming to with a Zippy, all right, but unfortunately wasn't to be. The game for me changed slightly when he fumbles in the red zone. There was a fumble mark in the red zone when they get an opportunity to score a touchdown. That would have been that was a killer because I think the game was there for them. And in overtime, they had an opportunity to get into field goal range, just couldn't pull it off. And I think we all in FP knew once Packers got the ball, they were going to go down and kick a winning field goal. But I'm not convinced by the Packers. That's why I say I don't think this game this weekend, once the Giants have their flaws, I don't think it'll be a walkover. I think it'll be quite close. And we're yet to see this Packers team really kick on to what we're used to seeing. But yet they're winning games, which is a sign of a good side. They come to later in the season. I hope they do bring their cheerleader with them on the weekend. I don't think they'll need any cheerleaders there because they'll have plenty of Packers fans there on Sunday. But like LaFleur is great. I don't even know he's watching the game. He's too busy trying to get the crowd going in Lambeau every time there's a game. So hopefully he turns up on Sunday and does a bit of cheerleading for them as well.
His brother's doing very well in New York, to be fair to him. I have to give it to him. Mark, let's focus on New England because we've got a game on Sunday and we can talk about the Packers offense then. Give us something to cheer about. Is Zappe the answer in New England? And what do you think of the run game as well? Or tell me this: were you surprised at how poor the Packers were yesterday at Lambeau with that crowd?
Yes and no. I mean, look, don't get me wrong. I fully believe before this game started that the Packers were going to win this game. And game starts, and Belichick can surprise sometimes, and the defensive game plan was really good. Yes, they still gave up way too many yards on the ground, but it was almost like Rodgers had a great slant on first play of the game to Lazard, his first drive of the game, and it's like the Patriots said, right, we're taking that out. That's the one thing. We're not giving him those throws. We're not giving him anything easy over the middle. We're not giving him anything down the seams. Everything's got to be out routes. Everything's got to be fades, etc. And we're going to fight and contest everything. And Rodgers didn't really adapt, and his receivers didn't adapt. And so much of that is on timing, and especially with younger receivers. Even when they did get free, they had a couple of drops. Of course, the pick six was on an out route. Jack Jones. I mean, there was plenty. I mean, Mac Jones wasn't playing, but there was Jack Jones, Jonathan Jones, Marcus Jones as well on returns. There were plenty of Joneses still doing the rounds. So it was a good defensive scheme, albeit that AJ Dillon and Ryan Grant loved the free space in the middle of the field. Sorry, it's not Ryan Grant, but they loved the run room they had, and the run defense was a bit missing. And yeah, it looked like a beautiful moment. It was almost the greatest Pyrrhic victory of Belichick's coaching career. If they pulled it off, it would have been up there with Jacoby Brissett winning a run-only game against the Houston Texans, 27-zip. I mean, it was just extremely well coached. Just wasn't enough in itself. It wasn't quite the red zone, Brian, but they were in field goal range when Zappe got injured. I mean, to be honest, I was watching it kind of going, the Patriots punter is called Jake Bailey. So at first, when you say Bailey Zappe, you're kind of going like, is the punter sponsoring some kind of bug spray? Like, what the hell's going on here? And more worrying for the Pats was Jacoby Myers, who's like our emergency quarterback, was injured for the game as well. So you instantly go through, well, hang on a second. If something happens to this guy, what are they going to do? I mean, they probably would have done what the Giants ended up doing, go Wildcat with Harris and Stevenson, effectively playing Wildcat quarterback. But it would have been interesting to say the least. So look, a Pyrrhic victory. The Patriots are still 1-3. Belichick still has them playing some good footballing times, and they gave Rodgers some fits. But Packers won, Patriots didn't. We all move on.
And there's your Patriots saga of the week, folks. You can't say we didn't talk about them, Ireland. Okay, Tom Brady last night threw as many touchdowns as he has so far this season. That was I do feel like we need to have a point in this game. We can't just fire through this game. Hell of a game. Hell of a play by Mahomes at the end. Chiefs looking really, really fresh. And just a very, very entertaining game. I personally, as someone watching the game, feel that the Chiefs are at least a level up on the Bucks. Brian, the NFC is absolute dog shit, isn't it? Let's just be honest here. Like, it's not good.
It's not. It's no way comparable to the AFC. That's the reality situation. But we knew that going into the season. We knew there was only 3 or 4 strong sides contending: the Rams, the Bucks, the Packers. But some team may come with a run. Or, well, okay, maybe the Eagles. Sorry, we didn't necessarily. I know Colin was quite high in the Eagles, but I don't think we saw the start in which they've had coming. But the Chiefs, for me, right now, are a team that they should have won that game last week in Indianapolis. They let that one slide. I felt they would rebound off that this week, and by God, did they rebound like Mahomes. Like, to go into Tampa and put 41 points up on this defense, and to be honest, they could have been more because they eased off slightly. This game is 41-31. This game was over early. This game was over by the half time. Mahomes 3 touchdowns, 249, but it's not even about the touchdowns. It's the way he's playing, the confidence he's using at the moment, and like, this is a brand new offense. Like, let's be fair, we spoke about it. They've evolved this offense in terms of the players they brought in, and Scantling is getting more involved now. Hilaire this year has been very impressive. Like, for a team that hasn't had much of a run game over the past few years, he seems really caught on. And the Bucks had their struggles, and yet they still found ways to put up points. Kelsey is obviously the X factor. He's 9 out of 10 yesterday. They couldn't manage Kelsey. Essentially, what we saw yesterday was completely different to what we saw in the Super Bowl, where they were able to hold him in check. The Chiefs, for me, right now, would be the team that would be the serious contender to be the AFC representation in the Super Bowl.
I still have the Bills as a better team, but I can't wait to see them play each other again, no doubt, at this point. Mark.
Sorry, one more. It's just like the Bills and Ravens are getting so much talk. The Chiefs will love this. This suits them down to the ground. No one's really talking about the Chiefs. They'll go about their business. They'll find themselves as the number 1 seed, potentially, and someone will have to go into Arrowhead again.
And I also hope that Colin was watching this when Brian said about the Eagles and how that, while Colin gave him a chance, he had to go to the Super Bowl. It must have been half decent. Right?
I said that Colin was the only one who saw this coming in terms of them being potentially the number 1 seed.
Yeah, I did not see the evolution or next level Jalen Hurts coming up again. I don't think anybody did, to be fair. Cards beating the Panthers. Couple of Irish lads over that game. Hope you enjoyed it, folks. Mark, give us the breakdown in this game before I look at the Giants. Brian's not talking about the Giants.
All right. Well, I was just going to say about the Chiefs Buccaneers. Tom Brady's now 55 yards away from 100,000. That's what I want to say. 100,000 yards. So, he's got a few yards.
Rushing or passing?
Total. Rushing, passing, and receiving all combined. No jokes about one-handed catches in Super Bowls not being made and things like that. So, he's... it's kind of an interesting career, regular and postseason combined, if anyone wants to check my maths. So, the Cards, look, it kind of a game that went a little bit the way I expected to, which is quite simply 2 not great teams, but the Cards having more than enough over the Panthers to eke out the victory. If Baker Mayfield was going to Carolina to revive his career, they're already talking now about when's Sam Darnold back potentially to come back in and take the starting slot away from him. Brian's smiling all over his face because he's been Baker's number 1. What's the opposite of a fan? A hater, I would say, for a while, just pointing out that he just didn't believe in him. So he's definitely proving anyone who didn't believe in him very right. And the Cards, they're still too sloppy. They're still relying too much on Murray to do something off script. Murray's still too careless with the football, and they still don't have all the answers all the way around the place. But they should, and they will win games like that against a team like Carolina. Interestingly as well, did anyone anyone? Most people, I think, probably caught J.J. Watt's tweet at the weekend about...
and how,
Yeah, it's like some personal information about me has just been leaked. Yeah, it's just that my heart had to be restarted. I went into AFib, so they just rebooted it. Everything's fine. That's it, just to tell you. And so, sorry, your heart stopped and it was restarted. And and I'm playing at the weekend. Very casual, like. Can't wait to hear more about that story when he gets interviewed a little bit more. But maybe that's what you get from paying for the Arizona Cardinals. You used to have the cardiac cats. The Bengals were originally back in the day. Maybe it's the cardiac Cardinals these
Not
days.
the time. Not the time. Have some heart, Mark. Have some heart. Show some heart. Brian, can we talk about the Giants on Sunday in our 1 hour special with 4 guests? Do we have to talk about? I mean, obviously, all right. Let's quickly go around and say this. Will Daniel Jones start on Sunday in London? I'm gonna say no, and I'm gonna say the ticket holders will not be happy. But then again, is Baker Mayfield the better quarterback? Brian, discuss.
Is Baker Mayfield the better quarterback than Daniel Jones? Come on, you absolutely kidding me. The Panthers have gone from Teddy good to Darnold average to Baker awful. But he'll be dropped soon and I'll be vindicated. Daniel Jones will be playing on Sunday. It's all smoke and daggers at the moment. I watched Brian Dable's live press conference today.
Okay.
Fine. He came back into the game, Michael. Like, I mean,
well, no, but that's fine. You've literally just told us he'll be fine, so we'll move on. Well done to the Giants.
Can I just say,
well.
is it not smoke and mirrors, not smoke and daggers? Just to check.
Well, there we go.
Mark,
I get the smoke.
Someone commented, good call, Mark. Not sure why that was in the script or something like that there. I thought so as well. I'm not sure what that means. I wasn't listening, but I'll get back to that. I don't know who it was. I can't see the comment because the majority voted not sure. My heart's starting to go a bit like JJ's here. Let's move on. I picked the Falcons. None of yous did. Good luck to yous. I actually like the Falcons. Is that bad at the minute? Marcus Mariota, only 7 for 19. 139 yards and 1 interception, and yet they scored 23 points against the Browns. Somebody jump in and tell me why the Browns are not in trouble right now, please.
The silence is deafening, Michael. The silence is deafening.
Before we get our picks before Monday Night Football, let's just bang on then, because I gave everyone an opportunity. Cowboys 25-10 victory. I have to give it to Mike McCarthy not rushing Dak back. Fair play to him. Dak Prescott last week was like, I'll be grand next week. No, you're not. Cooper Rush, Brian.
Yeah, he's methodical. He's game management. He's everything the Cowboys need right now, because he's going to win games, put them in a position that when Dak does come back, they have a serious chance to pip the Eagles potentially to win this division. I think they'll be earmarking Dak potentially being back for them when they play each other, which I think is quite late in the season. And they've done a bit unusual this year in terms of the division. They have a lot of the divisional games by and large towards the back end of the season. So there'll be great significance if the Cowboys keep going the way they're going. But the reality is for Washington, they can't protect Wentz. Offensive line is one of the worst in the league right now. Defense has not played up to the standard which we saw a couple of years ago. We're 2 years removed from that really strong defense. Chase Young he's AWOL, unfortunately, with injury. And until he comes back, potentially that might give him a bit of a boost. But right now, if Snyder didn't have his issues with the ownership, I think, to be honest, Ron Rivera could be the first out the door. But I think because they're not being coached very well right now, everything seems to be going wrong for them. Mark spoke earlier about good coaching and penalties. 11 penalties for 126 yards yesterday. That's significant. You're not going to win a game if you're giving up that type of penalties, Mark.
I was just going to say Cooper Rush doesn't lose, boys. Like every game he starts, he wins. So that's great. And he's also, if you look at a picture of Cooper Rush, you will see that he's giving Andy Dalton great competition for the most Irish-looking quarterback. So,
Andy Dalton, wow. Shout out to Irish Cowboys. I'm giving them a shout because I watched this whole show and we've only talked about their team for 30 seconds. We'll talk about them more. Is Carson Wentz the 5th best quarterback in the NFC East? Love that. Yes, he is. Monday Night Football picks Rams, Niners. This is a huge game for the Niners. Obviously the Rams as well, but the Niners are under pressure. Let make no doubt about it. Shanahan is under big pressure in San Francisco, and the Niners fans expect tonight. Colum's not here, so we'll get his pick first. Colum is picking. Oh, by the way, just before we do this, nobody's picking the Steelers this weekend, or I'm not making the graphics. All right, simple as that. Okay, Colin's picking the Niners. The Niners. Brian, who are you going to pick?
I'm going to go against Colin. I'm going to go for the Rams. And the Niners have beaten the Rams 6 times in a row in regular season, but the Rams broke that run, in the championship game last January where they finally overcame a Kyle Shanahan team. McVay hasn't had the best of times against them, and I don't think they have the best relationships, to be honest. But the 49ers concerned me last week. I know I do agree with your point, Michael, around the fact that even if Trey Lance hadn't got injured, with his struggles potentially carrying into the season, that they made a move to bring Jimmy G in. But we all spoke last week about Jimmy G in big games and how he struggles just to get them over the line. And right now, the Rams had a difficult week 1 game, but they've quietly gone about their business the last few weeks and taken care of the Falcons. And it was a big win last week within the division in Arizona. It's a big game. I'm surprised that the Rams aren't favourites, but I'm going to side with the Super Bowl champions to come out on top tonight.
Do you know, this is the thing about divisional games. Sometimes you can just get a matchup that just doesn't suit a particular team. Like, I always remember when it comes to the Rams, back in Pete Carroll's heyday in Seattle, the one team that always gave him fits was Jeff Fisher's Rams. And we all know Jeff Fisher, equal most losses as a head coach in the NFL, the master of the 8-8 season at best. For some reason, he always, and they destroyed them on special teams, they surprised them with different tactics, and they always just pipped Seattle. I think one season even, they were 2-14, and the 2 wins were against Seattle when Seattle were, a really good side. And Brian just alluded to it. These 2 teams, when they match up, other than obviously the playoff game where the Rams did see out, although the 49ers should have won, the reality is that this 49ers team in Shanahan have had McVay's number. 6-0 in the regular season. Jimmy G has never lost against them, I believe, in the regular season, if you're taking starting quarterback records into account. Another great stat I saw at the weekend, this Pittsburgh Steelers won 51 Monday Night Football games. Second place is San Francisco 49ers with 50. And my bet is the San Francisco 49ers, who really need this win, are going to run on the LA Rams. They're going to keep the ball away. They're going to manage their offense, which has not been as efficient this year. And my God, if anyone knows it inside out, it's Kyle Shanahan. And they are going to keep up their hoodoo in the regular season over the Rams. And I am going with the 49ers to be victorious. Kittle runs, always has a great game against the Rams. So there you go. That's the other thing. He was going to come out with 2 touchdowns, 49ers to win.
It's typical that the Niners will probably play far better tonight than they played in Denver. That was one of the worst primetime games I've ever seen. Jimmy Garoppolo was lucky to have 211 passing yards. He'll have more than the touchdown tonight. The thing that surprises me is the way that the Rams allowed the Cardinals to come back into the game on numerous occasions. The Cardinals were very, very poor against the Rams last week, and I would be concerned in regards to McVay's management at the minute in certain situations. Does he have the dressing room? Maybe I'm just being really annoying by saying that. There is a slight concern on my part. That being said, I think the game being in Santa Clara is a big difference for the Niners. The Niners need to win. I think Jimmy turns it on. I really do. And you got Jeffrey Wilson and Debo there. And Mark's spot on. This is a George Kittle. Welcome to the NFL season, George Kittle, that we see tonight. And I'm picking the Niners to beat the Rams in almost a full house. Not sure who Hogan picked, but Brian's going with the Rams. Us lads are going with the Niners. There will be serious questions asked to Shanahan if they lose this game.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Yeah, it's also it's a big game within the division. It's early in the season.
Yeah. I'm not sure if they'll ask big questions of him. 4 out of 6 seasons he's lost his starting quarterback. As far as he's concerned, his starting quarterback was Trey Lance. He's down his starting quarterback.
He drafted up to get Trey Lance, who was unproven at college level, and
he got injured, Michael. He's his starting quarterback. You're not going to question a coach that bad, or he's brought you to a Super Bowl, brought you to 2 NFC Championship games, when you say, hey, I've lost my starting quarterback for the season. That's the answer back.
But that's like me saying to you, here, I'm going to take you to LA for the Super Bowl, right? Come on, here, I'll get your flights. And here, we're going to stand outside SoFi and eat the pizza. They haven't won the thing. They haven't won the thing. That's Michael, the problem. People are getting annoyed in the Bay Area, 100%.
They haven't won the thing, but at least they're in the conversation. Like, you support the Broncos, Brian supports the Giants. There's a reason you've recycled through coaches terribly in the last 5-6 years. Because you're not winning
one to
anything.
talk. Okay, right.
Well, I'm a Patriots fan. We haven't recycled a coach, right, Michael? Let's just be clear on that.
No, I'm just talking about like
Point
expectations and management over the last
No.
few years.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the fact of why would they be under pressure when they actually have proved that they can win games, that they've got a team that they've committed to for another 6 years. Like, they've given Lynch and Shanahan extensions in the postseason, so why would he suddenly be under pressure after 4 weeks?
The disconnect for me is, if you read the stories and the reports over the past 12 to 18 months, is Kyle Shanahan thought he was getting Mac Jones when they moved up, and not Trey Lance. And that decision was taken out of his hands because it was supposed to be. We keep hearing about the two of them are very much in unison together in terms of how they work, and they agree on the decisions in advance. But obviously there was a completely mismatch because if you read the reports, John Lynch decided he wanted Trey Lance, and Kyle Shanahan wanted Mac Jones. We'll see.
Enjoy Monday Night Football, gents.
That's my cue to get everybody off this. Enjoy Monday Night Football. We'll be back during the week. We're also live from London at approximately 9:30, 9 o'clock if I get my own way. Sunday morning. Check it out on YouTube. Have a good night, lads. Keep her lit. It's long of fun.